Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Brian Thomas.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome. Distinguished guests, distinguished speakers, welcome to the 2015 Global Media Forum, this year dedicated to bringing you thoughtful insights and great speakers on the topic of foreign policy and global media in the modern era. And not only that, you might have noticed here this red buzzer. Well, in a very short while, DW will be going live worldwide with its new 24-hour English language news channel. I'm honored to be one of that news channel's TV anchors. Now, it's the culmination of a vision and a monumental effort by everyone at DW to bring a new voice to a rapidly growing field, as we all know, of international competition. We're pleased to have all of you here for this truly exciting leap into a new world for DW and for all its friends and audiences around the globe. Before we get our program underway, there's some important information for you. If you're using the headsets, Channel 1 is for English, Channel 2 is for French. And if you have any questions about the workshops that are coming up over the next 3 days, please feel free to talk to the staff in the foyer. They'd be more than happy to help you out. Well, as we get settled in, it's time for a little musical interlude. We're very happy to have with us Peter Materna and Michel Heupel. They're going to play a short number composed by Peter. Largo from Peter's concert, WOO. Michelle Heupel. Thank you very much. That was a Largo from WOO. Well, as we move closer to the official launch of DW's new flagship, I'd like to mention there's been a massive increase in the amount of programming that's been produced in Berlin. Now, those shows are being produced with an expanded network of correspondents and with a new state-of-the-art TV studio, Studio 3. To tell us what's ahead for DW in this incredible new future, please join me in welcoming the man leading DW, leading this network into that future, DW Director General Peter Limborg.
Frau Staatsministerin Professor Grütters, ich begrüße Sie ganz herzlich bei der DW zu Ihrem ersten Global Media Forum hier im alten Bonner Plenarsaal. Die deutsche Politik investiert wieder in die Deutsche Welle. Sie persönlich haben daran einen großen Anteil. Auch von dieser Stelle meinen herzlichen Dank. Ich freue mich auch sehr, dass Frau Staatsministerin Professor Böhmer bei uns ist, denn das Auswärtige Amt ist uns ein liebgewordener Partner und ein großer Unterstützer unserer Arbeit. Vielen Dank auch an Sie. Herzlich willkommen auch Staatssekretär Dr. Jan Eumann aus Nordrhein-Westfalen. Ich begrüße ganz herzlich unsere Gremienvorsitzenden, Prälat Dr. Jüsten, Peter Klever, schön, dass Sie da sind. Liebe Mitglieder von Rundfunk und Verwaltungsrat der Deutschen Welle, meine sehr geehrten Damen und Herren, liebe Freunde der Deutschen Welle. Ich heiße Sie alle herzlich willkommen hier zum Global Media Forum und wieder haben wir über 100 Länder vertreten hier bei fast 2000 Gästen. Das ist eine stolze Anzahl und ich freue mich über dieses Zeichen der Internationalität und erlauben Sie mir daher, dass ich in die Hauptkonferenzsprache Englisch wechsle. Ladies and gentlemen, despite the weather, this is a great day. Today, we can look forward for 3 days of stimulating ideas and discussions. Today also marks the start of DW's new English language television channel and the official start, not to forget, of our new application, which is really worth looking at, and I hope that you will load it down in these coming days so you won't miss anything from DW. As a notorious optimist, I normally follow the good old Monty Python rule to always look on the bright side of life. But as we talk about global media, this is not always as easy. Yes, there are positive developments. Around the world, we enjoy benefits of digitalization, such as the global flow of information and communication and interaction. Technology is making regional headway, with media markets booming in Asia, where HD, OTT, or video on demand are making big advances. Countries in Africa establish booming media markets. A traditional radio continent is opening for the internet and mobile media. Yet, despite the positives, the media situation is critical around the world. In many places, it's very worrying. Quality journalism is becoming increasingly difficult to implement. Sometimes that's due to a lack of knowledge about the standards of the craft, and sometimes it stems from a lack of funding. But frequently, the reasons behind journalistic impoverishment are political. Freedom of the press and freedom of expression are under huge pressure in many countries. For journalists, it becomes increasingly dangerous to investigate, report, and share their comments. In short, to speak the truth. More and more colleagues are paying with their lives for exercising their job and this human right. Freedom of information is also steadily being eroded. People are prevented from accessing independent information. Site blocking and censorship are sad realities in many countries. International broadcasters controlled by non-democratic regimes are ramping up. At the same time, we are witnessing a renaissance of cynical propaganda, disinformation, and media degradation, as the older generations among us might recall from Cold War days between East and West confrontation. Writers hired by government-affiliated troll factories pollute the internet. Religious fanatics upload their videos in inhuman brutality. The struggle for media dominance in the Cold War was practically a warm breeze compared to the battles of information and opinion made possible by digitalization, the internet, and social media. Even Germany is not an island of media bliss. That's evident in the non-word Lügenpresse currently making the rounds in some circles. It translates as liar press. It expresses the loss of confidence some people feel towards the media, even here in Germany too. But in Germany, everyone can speak his or her mind without restraint and voice their opinions in blogs on Twitter, Facebook, or other social media platforms. This distinguishes us from many other countries where bloggers, journalists, and other advocates of free speech have to fear for their lives. Ladies and gentlemen, sadly, an overwhelming majority of the world's population lives without a free press. Without free access to information, without the right to freedom of opinion, prosperity has grown, freedom, unfortunately, hasn't. So, after all this sad news, how do we respond to that? First of all, like I said in the beginning, with optimism. And also, I think here from the Global Media Forum, we are sending out a clear signal to the world that we fully defend media freedom and security. Deutsche Welle's Freedom of Speech Award, honoring Saudi Arabian blogger Raif Badawi, proves that commitment. Badawi is synonymous with everyone being held in custody and suffering for expressing their opinions. Secondly, it's important for media professionals around the world to work closely with one another. DW has more than 4,000 partners. We talk about our values with them and provide each other with mutual support and respect. I'm especially pleased and proud to welcome so many representatives from our partner broadcasters and platforms here today. And thirdly, with our new English language television channel and the overall restructuring of DW's programming to provide more information in 30 languages, be more international and address people more regionally, we want to be heard loud and clear as the voice of freedom and peaceful cooperation. Throughout the world, the struggle for freedom of expression has grown tougher. As a democratic nation in the heart of Europe, we want European values to be more widely perceptible. The launch of our English TV service is an important step in that direction. Ladies and gentlemen, like you, I'm looking forward to an interesting Congress, to meet interesting people and discuss fascinating topics. And I wish you good debates, many new ideas, and also, despite the weather, a lot of fun with the Global Media Forum. Thank you.
DW. Thank you very much, Peter. Well, along with news, Deutsche Welle for 60 years now has been very closely associated with culture for millions of people around the world. Whether it's the red carpet in the Berlinale, Wagner in Bayreuth, or Rockin' and Wacken, DW is there. And the new flagship has even more culture in store for lovers of culture and expanded coverage inside the 24-hour news program, making culture an integral part of DW's new programming. With that in mind, it is a very great honor to welcome our keynote speaker, Professor Monika Grütters, Germany's Commissioner for Culture and Media. Let's give her a very warm welcome, please.
Lieber Herr Intendant, sehr geehrter Herr Limburg, verehrte Frau Staatsministerin, liebe Maria Böhmer, sehr geehrter Herr Staatssekretär Dr. Eumann, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, auch Medienfreunde, und ich begrüße alle Abgeordneten aus dem Bundestag und aus den Länderparlamenten. Es schmeichelt mir ja sehr, dass die Deutsche Welle mir zutraut, die drei im offiziellen Titel meiner Rede genannten politischen
the three political priorities, media policy, foreign policy and digitization, to represent all that in a time window of 10 minutes and in a way that does not make the audience feel exhausted about the topic. Like Winston Churchill said, and I realize that this broad field, well, I'm not the only person to present that topic. State Minister Böhmer is also here to represent Federal Foreign Affairs, and Günther Oettinger is going to speak about media policy in his capacity as a Commissioner for Digital Economy. I would therefore just like to make some remarks. Let me speak of Florian Mingert, an artist. A year ago, in December 2013, 1.5 years ago, he received a letter by the police headquarters stating that he had violated the confidentiality of the privacy of the word. His microphones were hanging in the Black Forest and elsewhere at places where people felt unheard and unobserved. And he published forest protocols, as he called it, and that was the title of an artistic project, which he published on his website. The aim was to raise attention for the fact that people in the digital age, there's no space of privacy, of absolute privacy anymore. And the answer of the digital world was police investigations. Somebody had sued him because he felt that his privacy had been violated. We could think that this is understandable, but it is also a reaction that shows the gap between analog and digital world, and the conflict between our attitudes as a user of the internet and as a citizen of a bureaucratic state that is governed by the rule of law. Online, meaning the internet, we can't guarantee that anything that we Google, any term that we enter, is dealt with confidentiality, that our privacy is guaranteed. But offline, in the forest, we think that it's strange when we are faced with one single microphone. As a user, we accept that our privacy is violated, and we take that for granted. But as a citizen of an analog world, we defend ourselves ferociously against that. In the digital life, we waive rights we think are fundamental rights and defend them when offline. Digital erosion of democratic fundamental rights. Stating this artist is in good company. International spearheads of debates of that kind is someone who was awarded the Peace Award of the German publishing trade, authors like Mr. Eggers, who published The Circle from the Path to Digital Totalism, and former entrepreneurs of the Silicon Valley like Andrew Keen, who in his book published in German this year, The Digital Disaster, admonishes the dangers of the digital economy. They all draw our attention to the fact that our freedom in the internet is jeopardized by two sides at least. On the one hand, by the digital information monopoly of the big in interpreting capacities and monopolies of the big corporations. They lead us the way and they decide what we are shown online according to intransparent rules and criteria. And on the other hand, there's the danger by the tutelage, the digital tutelage, that is linked to us handing over private data voluntarily for the sake of a more efficient and allegedly better life. So there are less and less spaces in our life that are protected against the public eye. But in order to mention again the forest protocols I mentioned at the outset, those who have to be afraid of microphones being present in the forest behave differently than somebody who thinks that he or she is in a protected space. Democratization of the digital arena, the imposition of fundamental democratic rights in the internet, from my point of view, that is the fundamental political challenge in our digital age and society. The values we think are constitutive for our democracy in the analog world have to be preserved in the digital world and have to be defended there. And this results in a political and also cultural and media policy task. As a state minister for the media and culture, I think it's very important that, considering what is feasible from a technological point of view and taking into account the market powers, it is essential that our privacy is still a priority. Let me illustrate this with two examples. We need a modern author right, intellectual property right. You have to be able to live by your intellectual work, and this doesn't mean just to be able to survive, but these people have to be paid in accordance with their intellectual and artistic work. On that note, I'm in favor of an adaptation of the intellectual property right I submitted to as a draft act, and I submitted a proposal after the meeting of the corresponding committee in the EU, and I confronted different topics, and I was also in agreement with the Minister of Law, of Justice. Secondly, we need fair competition and protection from market power. Data monopolies are monopolies of interpretation, and they turn into opinion monopolies easily. This is why at Google, with a more than 90% of market share in Europe and in Germany, I consider this as very critical. Finding content in Google is a criterion for publicistic and economic success. And a fair competition is something totally different. And fair competition is a prerequisite for any kind of market of opinion which we use to evoke. And this is why I'm in favor that the EU Commission, more consistently than in the past, has faced that question, and in the current antitrust proceedings against Google has announced a more rigid position. In order to preserve the competition mechanisms and in order to guarantee the pluralism of the media in the Commission of the federal government and the lender I coordinate, this is precisely the topic we want to deal with. Ladies and gentlemen, the most important instances of democratic control are the independent media. This is why media quality and diversity are essential in the digital age. And luckily, there are media companies, director generals, etc., who search for rules with all their might in order to maintain quality and diversity in the media and to safeguard the freedom of the press in the world. Deutsche Welle makes a very important contribution, has made a contribution for more than 60 years, and against the backdrop of a large number of crises, and in spite of massive Russian non-information in the Baltic state, the work of Deutsche Welle is more important than ever before. We are lucky to have you. Deutsche Welle represents freedom of the press, human rights, democracy, and last but not least, it represents a societal model that is so attractive that it serves as an orientation for the market economy. It's an ambassador of our democratic rule of law, particularly in regions of crisis and in states that are governed in an authoritarian way. It's like a link to the free world for many people. And this is why we increased our subsidies to Deutsche Welle above the necessary and more. And I'm pleased that the English-speaking program DW News is launched today, which in future will provide many people with independent and objective news. This brings me to the conclusion, and it brings me to the international arena of foreign policy. And I would like to conclude by using Otto von Bismarck's words, who gave us some iron diplomatic rules as a legacy. And he said, if you say that you agree in principle to something, this means that you don't have the slightest intention to implement something in practice. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you a lot of success for your conference and a little consensus, but lots of debates with results and findings on foreign policy and international democracy in the digital age. Thank you very much.
Professor Monika Grütters, Germany's Commissioner for Culture and Media, DW, having a big role to play in all the challenges ahead in our digital age. Thank you so very much. Our next speaker has spent much of her long professional career working to help culture, promote culture, and education, not only here in Germany, but around the world as well. And in the course of that work, she's discovered some very unique insights into media and foreign policy in the digital age. Please join me in extending a very warm welcome to Professor Dr. Maria Böhme, Minister of State from the German Foreign Office. Welcome.
Sehr geehrter Herr Intendant Peter
Director
Limburg,
General Peter Limburg, dear colleagues, Minister of State Monika Grütters, Secretary of State Eumer, ladies and gentlemen. I'm especially pleased to be here in the World Conference Center. I experienced it as a plenary room of the Federal Parliament, but you see that times change rapidly, and this is also what happens to Deutsche Welle. Today we will see the launch of the English-speaking channel. It has been discussed very much among us, but I think in this era is absolutely necessary in order to proceed and to reach more and more people across the world. This 8th Global Media Forum will also focus across another development, and this is the digitalization in the media world and also in foreign policy. And now I'd like to switch over to English.
2014, I visited the CERN Nuclear Research Center near Geneva. At CERN, we recall the invention of the World Wide Web more than 20 years ago. It all began when a member of the CERN staff wanted to optimize the internal transmission of information. He presented a proposal, which his boss described as vague but exciting. Today, the Internet is the information and communication platform for people throughout the world. 2.7 billion people regularly surf the net. That represents about 40% of the global population. Facebook, Google, YouTube define our everyday digital lives. They make it easier for us to communicate, obtain information, and engage in social networking. There are, however, downsides. What about the vast quantities of data collected by certain leading companies? What about data protection and online security? These were already burning issues long before the recent hacking attack on the Bundestag. That leads me to the following question. What impact has the increasing digitization of our lives on the media and foreign policy. Was it not the social media that had to trigger and accelerate the Arab Spring? They played a vital part in enabling civil society, with state-controlled media, a voice that was heard worldwide. Through the social media, civil societies demonstrated for a fundamental democratic principle, namely freedom of the press and freedom of information. Think of countries engulfed in regional crises and armed conflicts, such as Ukraine. In order to support pluralism and balanced reporting, Deutsche Welle has stepped up its activities in Ukraine. Deutsche Welle is advising the newly created public broadcasting service in Ukraine. At this point, Mr. Limburg, may I offer you and your staff my thanks for this great commitment. Particularly in regions torn by crisis and conflict, in countries where freedom of opinion is restricted, bloggers and online activists are playing an increasingly important role as citizen journalists. But what framework applies to an internet in which anyone can publish anything, in which the background to a report cannot be reliably pinned down? Convincing answers must be found to this question if journalistic output is to be credible and thus inspire confidence among readers and listeners. Global crises, armed conflicts, and terrorist attacks have placed even a greater responsibility on the media for their reporting. This is compounded by the fact that the media must also face up to the global market challenges. What strategies are media providers such as television broadcasters developing to keep viewers watching and to attract media users in this digitized world? According to a study of the Hans Bredow Institute, television remains the main source of news for German internet users. In the international comparative study, Germany is on top in terms of reliance on television use. It is notable that the respondents consider television's reporting to be particularly trustworthy. The trust in the media is highest in countries with public broadcasting corporations. With regard to news programs, broadcasters must likewise adapt to new usage habits created by the internet. Deutsche Welle has been able to broaden its range of services through improvements in content and distribution. Whereas 86 million people a week use the TV, radio, and online services provided by Deutsche Welle in 2009, this weekly figure had risen to no fewer than 101 million by 2012. And your new Breaking World app is keeping users in touch with the latest news and information on major issues. Changing using patterns are affecting not only Deutsche Welle, but all other broadcasters too. As a long-standing member of the ZDF Television Council, I am watching current developments with interest. One example of adaptation to changing user habits is a new ZDF news program Heute Plus, which is geared to online users. A key role is played by the social networks, in which breaking news are discussed with users at an early stage. Whoever the broadcasters, one thing is clear: the precondition of any successful new programs is quality. Only those who enjoy their users' trust can continue to survive in the digital age. At times like these, when freedom of opinion is restricted and threatened in many countries and regions of the world, the diversity responsibility and credibility of the media are all the more important. I therefore wish you an inspiring exchange of views at the Global Media Forum. Thank you very much.
Maria Böhme, Minister of State from the German Foreign Office. Well, thank you very much, Doctor. You can't talk about a global media forum like this one in the state of North Rhine-Westphalia without mentioning that this state is a German export powerhouse for technology, innovation, and of course, media. Many here like to see North Rhine-Westphalia as a kind of California, although I'm sure the Bavarians might disagree with that. Our next speaker has spent much of his professional career moving North Rhine-Westphalia ahead, especially its media sector, moving it forward, not only in Germany, but on the international stage as well. Let's give a big welcome to Dr. Mark Young-Oyman. He's the State Secretary for Federal Affairs, Europe, and Media of North Rhine-Westphalia. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good morning. And no mistake, North Rhine-Westphalia is the hub for media in Germany and probably comparable with California. Director General, Minister of State, Mrs. Grütters, Minister of State, Mrs. Böhme, dear Mr. Houston, dear Mr. Klever, dear Dr. Kofler, dear international guests. It is my pleasure to welcome you here in North Rhine-Westphalia this morning. I do so also on behalf of the state government and especially the Premier, Hannelore Kraft, who is sending her greetings. To be sure, there is no better place than the Global Media Forum to discuss the role of the media and especially the digital media for communication across borders in foreign policy and also in international diplomacy. North Rhine-Westphalia has been, for many years now, the leading center of the media and communication sector in Germany. We are home to 25,000 media companies, amongst them several global players. Our very lively media sector is comprised of successful broadcasters, movie production companies, internet firms, publishers, and newspapers. To strengthen and develop this diversity and creativity is one of the main policy aims of a state government. Bonn, on the other hand, is a German center for international cooperation and a leading sustainability cluster, where the big challenges of the 21st century are discussed. Just a couple of weeks ago, together with GITS, we hosted a big international conference to discuss the ongoing SDG process and the global transformation thesis new global goals are going to require. In the city of Bonn, the UN city on German soil, the media and the international sphere overlap. The Global Media Forum is a key element of this dialogue and has evolved as one of the major international platforms when it comes to debating the role of the media. Many thanks and respect go to the broadcaster, our host, Deutsche Welle, especially to Director General Mr. Limburg. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, of course, we live in interesting times. The invention of the personal computer and of the internet has changed the world fundamentally since the 1940s. The rapid changes we are witnessing today might be only comparable to the Industrial Revolution some 150 years ago. Bill Gates recently stated that the digitalization, and I quote, improved the world in just about every area you can think of. Amazing developments in communications, collaboration, and efficiencies. New kinds of entertainment and social media, access to information, and the ability to give a voice to people who would never have been heard. In the communication across borders, the growing relevance of digital media can hardly be overstated. They can serve as a counterbalance to government propaganda and censorship. And they can challenge the high ground that has been reserved to the conventional media for so long. It is therefore time to rethink the concept of audience, the concept of the public. And maybe it is time to get used to new venues for discourse. Who would argue with that? Whether the Arab Spring, Ukraine, or the Nepal earthquake, digital media had and still have a key role in those events or their aftermath. Organizing protests and resistance, providing different views of reality, mobilizing compassion, empathy, response to suffering, and so forth. I think it's fair to agree with Mr. Gates in his assessment. The digital revolution gave many people a voice who otherwise never would have been heard. On the other hand, it would be a little naive to proclaim what the Egyptian internet activist Ghonim said in 2011. If you want to liberate a society, just give them the internet. We all know that the web can be used to restrict freedom of speech. Network traffic can be blocked, manipulated, or otherwise tinkered with. Hoaxes, doctored images, and any sort of propaganda, Director General already mentioned this point, are part of this new digital world as are whistleblowing websites. I'm convinced that especially in the digital age, we still need professional journalism. We need those who have the skills to process, evaluate, and prioritize the flood of information, of messages and images. Their work is crucial, today more than ever, to the development of informed opinion. Deutsche Welle is such a stronghold of professional journalism and Germany's media ambassador with a huge role in introducing the people all over the world to German views and culture. Deutsche Welle stands for intercultural dialogue and, equally crucial, for independent journalism from places where full and critical reporting can be difficult, if not downright dangerous. And, let's face it, there are still far too many places like that. Reliable and current use reporting is therefore all the more important, and so I'm pretty excited and looking forward to the new DW news channel, which is going on air today in approximately 20 minutes. Governments play an equally important role for today's highly diverse and converging media environment, which is channeling information in a globalized world and ever shorter news cycle. There is a need for a democratic, inclusive, transparent, and proportionate regulation to properly utilize the opportunities provided by the internet. We must make sure that there is diversity and transparency. To achieve this, the German states are working with the federal government, and Minister of State already mentioned this, to overhaul existing rules to take media convergence into account. Given that the global nature of media markets require some sort of international regulation, the states are making their voices also heard on the European level in the discussions on the digital single market, network policy, and net neutrality, as well as the TTIP free trade agreement. North Rhine-Westphalia too is thinking and acting globally. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted that as part of an exciting and very busy program over the coming days, you will be discussing all these new ways and challenges of digital media and of political communication. I intend to follow this debate very closely. Let me wish you all a very successful conference, fruitful talks, and some networking, and I hope two things: that the message to the folks back home will be that going to Bonn for the Global Media Forum was well worth your while, and that the weather will be better. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marc-Jan Oyman, State Secretary for Federal Affairs, Europe and Media, North Rhine-Westphalia, talking about the importance of diversity and transparency in this digital age. Well, there's an incredible amount of energy, resources, time, and talent that goes into making a new news channel. For our ceremonial speech, we're happy to be joined by a man that you could really call a channel launch expert, a pioneer in the world of making news channels. Among the channels he's launched or had a hand in launching: ProSieben, Kabel 1, N24. Let's give a big welcome to Georg Koffler with a warm round of applause.
Thanks. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As we all know, Deutsche Welle, DW, is an institution for public service broadcasting. And on this basis, its key performing elements are independent journalism and a determined focus on quality program. From now on, these ambitious commitments are also expressed with a new claim that you can read behind me on the wall, made for minds. I think that this claim is one of the best that has been created so far in our German media industry, and it is certainly the best to underline the genuine duties of public service broadcasting, namely to address the minds of the audience and not the cheapest and lowest common denominator of mass entertainment. There is absolutely nothing to say against mass entertainment. This is a natural and legitimate function of a free media market. But this is not the job of public service television or broadcasting. Public service broadcasting has the unique privilege of being financed by public fees. And in return, it has to create a sustainable programming for information, culture, and education. I think that DW Deutsche Welle fulfills this commitment with its current programming, and especially now with its enhanced programming, better than most of the other colleagues of public service television. Made for Minds also addresses what the famous actor and theater director in Germany, Gustav Gründgens, once said: if you are on the stage, try to bring the people up to you and don't step down to please it the easy way. So, Made for Minds certainly does not stand for this avalanche of unreflected statements, comments, vlogs and blogs, and this mix of unverified information and sometimes deliberately manipulated news. For all this, allow my frankly speaking, for all these megatons of bullshit that flow through in real time through the internet. Now, I didn't expect this applause. And therefore, public service broadcasting, more than ever, has to be a lighthouse for serious and open-minded journalism, for accurately researched information, for a responsible agenda setting by a fair and competent judgment of priorities, and for a high level of cultural reporting. Made for Minds also reminds us the old but still valuable claim of Made in Germany. DW is a public service broadcaster made in Germany as a broadcasting voice in the world. And as you know, DW is not alone. There is a lot of competition out there. And some of our competitors, of course, as all we know and we know it, do not share our values and our way of life. So other states like Qatar, Russia, China, you name them, have geared up their state-owned broadcasting institutions to influence the public opinion on a worldwide scale. And in this international context now, DW has the duty to hold up our German standards for freedom, democracy, human rights, and our German standards for an independent and pluralistic media system. So I think that the German government, and especially Frau Staatsminister Monika Grütters, took a wise decision in stabilizing and increasing the financial basis for DW. I really think that this is an efficient investment in protecting and distributing our cultural values. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the postulation of great ideas and great commitments is one thing. The performance in the real world is another one. Now, DW is performing an impressive output of radio programming, television programming, and online programming, day by day. And if you want to follow that, as Mr. Peter Limburg already told you, you have to download the new DW app. I did it already, and if you don't have done it so far, you should do it after this session immediately. It is a real enrichment for the news flow on your smartphones and on your home screens. Today, DW Deutsche Welle is a well-managed, modern media company, solidly financed. And so I tell to the management and to the journalists and the editors of Deutsche Welle, there are no more excuses. Now you have to perform your program in a quality that matches your great claim, made for Mainz. And I wish you all the best for this important job.
Like Georg Köffler. The pressure's on public broadcasting after that to measure up in this international age. Well, as we wait for the countdown to begin, maybe we could get Director General Limburg and Commissioner Grütters to answer a few questions briefly before the clock starts running down and the buzzer begins. So, not yet.
Not yet.
Commissioner Grütters, a question about DW positioning itself. Es wird immer härter im internationalen Wettbewerb für Sender wie
difficult in the international arena for DW. Where should DW position itself in this competition?
Ist, dass wir objektive
Is that we have an objective information, that we broadcast documentaries, and that we categorize the information in the context, so that a Russian disinformation policy in the Baltic states is not counteracted with a different type of competition, but we want to have neutral, fact-based journalism, which is much more credible for many people in order to be able to understand politics. So fact-based information is very important. Yes, and the information as such.
Director General Limburg, it's almost time. It's almost time. Bald ist es soweit? Was sagen die Gefühle nach so einer aufregenden Zeit?
Glaube ich weniger. Also, ich nehme mal das mit.
Ja.
Also ich glaube, der Kollege Fotograf muss kurz mal weg, sonst sehen wir
Colleague,
nämlich
the photographer has to leave because otherwise we don't see when the countdown starts. Well, I'm excited and I'm grateful to our employees who did a tremendous job in the course of the last year, and they had to undergo constant change. And this is why I think that we really launched something extraordinary. It is a program that's worthwhile watching, an app, a cultural change also in the company, and this is what I'm feeling. And I'm also full of hope that everything's going to work properly as we wanted to once we press this buzzer.
Frau Grütters, noch eine kurze Frage stellen.
One more question to Ms. Grütters. DW, can it play a role when it comes to promoting German culture in the world? Well, culture is a very important priority in Deutsche Welle, and it's very important when diplomacy and the policymakers reach their limits. And this is why we're going to apply a lot of culture when pressing this buzzer in a moment.
Ja, da haben wir es. Es ist soweit. DW's new international news channel.
This is DW News live from Berlin. It's the day of reckoning for Greece. Can Athens reach a deal with its creditors? While Greeks rally in the capital ahead of an emergency summit of Eurozone leaders this evening, all sides are pushing for an agreement to stave off a default and possible Grexit. Also coming up in the show, one of Al Jazeera's best-known journalists spends a second night in custody in Berlin. Ahmed Mansour is waiting to hear whether he'll be extradited to Egypt, where he would face 15 years in prison. And in women's soccer, Canada beats Switzerland to secure a place in the quarterfinals and keep the host World Cup party in full swing. It's good to be with you. I'm Leila Harak. It's a decisive day for Greece and for Europe. In just a few hours' time, Eurozone leaders meet to try and hammer out a last-minute deal to keep Greece in the euro. Well, so will it be deal or no deal? No deal could lead to a Greek default within days and a so-called Grexit. Ahead of the meeting, people in Athens have been making their feelings known on the street.
It was a very European demonstration. They wrote Democracy for Europe in English and German, as well as in Greek. About 5,000 turned out to back their government as leaders prepare for the emergency summit. They're looking for a deal for Greece, one that saves them from further rounds of painful cuts.
I reckon that the Greek representatives will not submit, will not accept the blackmail. They will not return defeated with austerity measures in hand. That's why today's protest and the ones to come will show that the Greek people are standing by the Greek government, even if we don't get our way.
Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras submitted a list of suggestions to secure a deal after a number of phone calls to creditors. He needs to unlock 7 billion euros in bailout funds to stave off a Greek bankruptcy. Questions for Finance Minister Yanis Varoufakis seem as endless as the financial hole he faces.
What do you expect, a press conference while I'm driving? No.
Varoufakis said he remained confident that he and Prime Minister Tsipras could persuade Greece's creditors to keep the country afloat and in the euro. Yet he's facing demands to cut pension payments and raise value-added tax rates. The hope among demonstrators here, though, was that the government will not back down, no matter what the price.
All right, well, let's talk to Georg Mattes in Brussels. Georg, the Greece submitted new proposals. How are they being received in Brussels?
Well, Alexis Tsipras just arrived here minutes ago and was received at the European Commission with a big hug from the head of the European Commission, Juncker. The Commission then, however, went on to say, and Jean-Claude Juncker himself, that the offer that has been put on the table is only a step in the right direction. It is the basis for an agreement, but not more for the moment.
And Georg, of course, ever since this crisis broke out, we've been 1 week away from Armageddon. Could this latest deadline serve as a catalyst for all parties to finally make concessions?
I think it stands a good chance that both sides will be prepared to go the extra mile. A lot is at risk here. If this special summit will not produce results, it will be a lose-lose situation, and hence there are already speculations in town that even the creditors will be prepared to make further concessions to the Greek side.
All right, Georg Mattes there reporting from Brussels. Well, let's get you now the economic angle on the Greek debt crisis.
That was DW live from Berlin, the new DW news program. Well done,